UFC 326, Holloway versus Oliveira 2 for the BMF belt took place over the weekend, and today I'm going to be taking a look back at the card, giving my thoughts on all the fights on this card, and making some matchups for the future from some of the notable fighters. So we'll jump straight into the main events. Max Holloway versus Charles Oliveira, the new BMF champion. Charles Oliveira, that is. Gets it done, 50-45 decision. I think there arguably could have been a 10-8 round somewhere sprinkled in, maybe in the first one of the first two rounds. This was a domination. This was just a dominant fight through and through from Charles Oliveira. Did such a great job implementing the grappling. Much better than I thought. Holloway, he's had notoriously good takedown defense in his career. However, he hasn't been tested against a grappler at the level of Charles Oliveira. And we've seen in Charles Oliveira's career recently, especially looking back at the Michael Chandler fight, which I know Michael Chandler skill wise is not very good, but if we're just taking a look at Charles Oliveira in a vacuum in that fight, I mean he did such a good job just with the fundamentals of wrestling, with pressuring him back up to the cage and just chaining together all the wrestling, getting him down to the ground and controlling him there. And he showed that he has that against higher level opponents than Michael Chandler as well. I mean, we also saw it against Mateusz Gamrot, who's one of the best wrestlers in the lightweight division, and he completely handled him on the ground. So Charles Oliveira, it's a different Oliveira than what we're used to. This is I don't think he's in his prime anymore per se, but I think this is arguably a more effective Charles Oliveira against different types of fighters than we've ever seen him before. I mean, he does such a good job chaining together the wrestling, as opposed to early in his career where it was he would just trade in the pocket, fight fire with fire. He would usually get knocked down and then bounce back up, and it would be after he gets some success on the feet of his own, then he would start to have some success in the grappling. But now we're seeing in his career that he can go straight to the wrestling, get guys down, and he is such a nightmare on the ground for anyone. I'm surprised Holloway didn't get subbed. He showed excellent submission defense in this fight. That was definitely a good aspect of this fight for Max Holloway. That was the only good aspect of this fight for Max Holloway. It was a rough night for him. He got completely shut out in this one. I know a lot of people are complaining about this being this is the BMF fight, and it was boring to them. And to that I say, go watch kickboxing. It feels good to be on the other end of it. It feels good to be able to say that when one of my fighters win. I love it. I had to deal with it when I watched Dricus versus Hamzat and when I watched JDM versus Islam. It feels good to be on the other end of it. But jokes aside, for real, yeah, it's. I mean, you're having one of the best grapplers in the sport take on one of the best strikers in the sport, and the grappler has a tremendous strength advantage. I think it's pretty obvious where that fight's going to go. Now, what wasn't obvious to me in the build-up, I thought Holloway's takedown defense would be better. I didn't think Charles would be so aggressive on the front foot like he was. I mean, he blitzed at Holloway early, got him backed up straight against the cage, backed up, nowhere to move. He was backing up in a straight line, and Charles just blitzed him. He just blitzed him, was throwing big combinations, and just shot in on the hips. Immediately got down, picked Holloway up in the air, dunked him down, and it was the case for all 5 rounds really. It was total domination, and he used that aggressiveness on the feet to get Holloway backed up and into those precarious positions where he's not going to be able to defend the takedown. So impressive performance from Charles Oliveira through and through. Another thing that I don't really understand with people complaining about this is I get that that whole gimmick belt on the line, the BMF belt and stuff. I hear it, but this is a fight with real title implications in the 155-pound division. I mean, one of these two could be fighting for the belt next. So I don't understand this whole thing about it wasn't entertaining enough. Above all else, this is a fight where one of these guys is going to go on to get a title eliminator fight. So this whole thing about it wasn't entertaining enough. Just take the gimmick belt out of it. I wish they would do away with it. This could have handled a pay-per-view main event spot just fine as just a contender fight, because that's what it is. It is just a contender fight with just a silly belt on the line. The only reason they do it is so they could say they have a title fight in the main event. But yeah, more importantly than anything, this was a fight to move these guys up in the division and potentially get a title shot in the near future. So I'm happy with how Charles performed. I was rooting for him, of course. I'm a big Charles Oliveira fan. I'm glad he stuck to the game plan as well as he did, because it's not something I expected. I actually thought it shouldn't be surprising for me to think that he wouldn't stick to the game plan. Actually, I mean that's a pretty big staple in his career. I mean, you look back to the Ilya Tapiria fight, he wasn't able to have success in the grappling during that first scramble, and after that he just he just lunged forward in the range with a right hand overextended against Ilia Topuria, who is the most dangerous boxer in the UFC, and got his lights shut out. I mean, he did not stick to the game plan at all in that fight, and he paid for it. So I guess, maybe Topuria knocked some sense into him. I don't know, but yeah, Charles came out there with a great game plan, implemented it well, and totally dominated this fight. And now I'll get into a little 2-for-1 special. I'm not breaking it up into 2 separate videos. I'm going to do who I would match up each of these guys with next. So for Charles Oliveira, it's none other than the Arman Tsarukyan rematch. I don't like this matchup for Charles. I think Arman would win again, even if it's a 5-round fight. So it sucks. I don't want to put him in a matchup where I think he's going to lose, but I think this should be a number 1 contenders fight, or potentially, because there was a lot of talk about Ilia versus Islam being made at 170. Maybe they do Ilia versus Gaethje, of course, at the White House. That's already booked. That's going to happen. And then maybe Ilia vacates and moves up to 170 to try and go for triple champ status, and then that leaves a vacant belt fight between Arman Tsarukyan and Charles Oliveira. I think there's a lot of different ways this could play out, but regardless, I think the matchup that makes sense for both of these guys next up is each other. Just because, especially the first fight was so close. I mean, it was a split decision. Really could have gone either way. Charles had a lot more moments with the submission attempts. Arman had a little bit more success with control and landing some ground and pound shots. So it was a razor close fight, and I would love to see it run back in a 5-round co-main event slot of a pay-per-view. Maybe you could do this as a fight night main event, like in Brazil, maybe if they go there later in the year again. But I think this would be a very, very solid pay-per-view co-main fight. So I don't mind them doing that if they want to save it for a pay-per-view. We'll move on to Max Holloway's next opponent, who I have next for him, and that is Benoit Saint Denis. I think he'll probably want to take a little bit of time off, but overall, not a ton of damage taken this fight. He did get hit with some elbows when Charles was on his back, but really, really not too much damage. I think Holloway, he needs to bulk up a little bit, put on a little bit more muscle. I don't know if he really properly bulked up to 145 or to 155 after being at 145 for so long, because he got completely manhandled in this fight. It wasn't just a grappling skill difference, which was a big part of it. It was also just an immense strength difference. I mean, Charles Oliveira was completely ragdolling him. So I'd like to see him put on, I don't know, maybe get a little bit of a bigger frame on him, bulk up a little bit. And I think this is an interesting matchup. I think Benoit Saint Denis is very, very hittable on the feet. But he kind of poses the same threat that we saw Holloway struggle with in this fight, which is getting on that pressure early, getting you backed up against the cage and shooting and getting you down and working you on the ground. Benoit Saint Denis is very good at that. But we've also seen him be able to get that strategy off against Dustin Poirier and then go on to get knocked out once he tired out. So it'd be an interesting matchup for both guys. I think it would answer a lot of questions for both Benoit Saint Denis and Max Holloway. See who's really made the adjustments in their career. That'd be interesting to see. And I think Benoit is already on a trajectory up to the top of the division. He's coming off 3 straight wins. So yeah, this would be a good fight for him next up. I think it'd be a good test, and it'd be a good potential bounce back fight for Max Holloway. So we'll move on to the co-main events after that now. Caio Borralho versus Reinier de Ridder. Caio gets this one done, 29-28 decision. I think the judges all 3 scored it actually 30-27. I had it scored 29-28 for Caio. I thought he won rounds 1 and 3 pretty clearly, and the only reason he lost round 2 is because he was completely inactive. He threw virtually nothing on the feet. But Reinier de Ridder looked awful in this fight, like god-awful. And I said in my breakdown that I was kind of 50-50 on who I think could win this one, because, Reinier does have the finishing potential. He does have those dangerous knees to the body. He has that dangerous, the jiu-jitsu on the ground. He's such a threat down there. But this was just a dominant fight from Caio Borralho in rounds 1 and 3. And de Ridder, yeah, he looked dreadful. I mean, he looked so lethargic and just ineffective on the feet. I mean, every shot he threw looked like it was in slow motion. It looked weak. And Caio Borralho, you could see he didn't, even from the opening bell, he was not worried about anything de Ridder had for him on the feet from the very beginning, because he charged straight across the cage, had his hands down, was flowing, just bouncing back and forth, his hands completely down by his waist. And yeah, I honestly, just watching Reinier de Ridder in this fight, the fact that Caio Borralho even made it as, I don't want to say it was competitive, but even allowed it to be scored as a 29-28 decision, that's pretty disappointing. I think that was a pretty bad look on Caio Borralho. Obviously, it's good for him to get back in the win column, but that was a not very good performance from him either. I thought there was a lot of occasions where I thought de Ridder is going to get knocked out, and Borralho never really found that shot. And he did good. He did good. He had success in pretty much all areas of this fight. He was doing good on the ground. He was kind of muscling DeRitter around himself on the ground. Obviously, he was winning most exchanges on the feet. There was a couple shots that Rainer DeRitter he'd wing a big one and catch Baralho with it, but it wouldn't have any effect because he's throwing it in slow motion. But yeah, Baralho tagged him a lot. I thought he was going to knock him out in this fight as the fight went on. It didn't end up happening. He gets a decision win. But yeah, not a terribly big stock up performance from Kyle Baralho. I'm kind of left a little unimpressed. And then for DeRitter, just a shockingly bad performance. That was atrocious. He's moving up to 205. He said in his next fight, and I don't know. I mean, maybe that'll help. Maybe not having to cut as much weight will make him look less lethargic out there. I mean, speaking about Alex Pereira when he moved up from 185 to 205. I do think there was a big difference in how just switched on he looked in fights. He looked a lot more dialed in. He looked a lot less kind of loosey goosey out there. He looked a lot more springy and just an explosive. So maybe Rainer DeRitter, without having to cut as much weight, maybe he'll kind of unlock that and he'll look a bit more explosive. I certainly think he has a big enough frame to fight at 205. I don't think he's going to get muscled around up there, and I don't think he's going to get put out cold unless he's fighting like this. If he keeps fighting like this, all sloppy and stuff, he's going to get his lights shut out. So it'll be interesting to see how he does at 205. That'll certainly be something to see. And I guess with that said, we'll move into who I got matched up for both these guys next. Starting with the winner, of course, Kyle Baralho. I would like to see him take on the winner of this fight coming up later this month in March 28th. Izzy versus Joe Pyfer. I think Pyfer's going to win this personally. I think a little bit of a spoiler on my prediction, but I don't know, man. Pyfer is just so dangerous, and his boxing defense is just piss poor, and he's looked slower as his career has gone on. I think Pyfer's going to knock him out. I do, and I think that would set up a very exciting fight between Joe Pyfer and Kyle Baralho next. I think that'd be a very interesting one, and I guess if Izzy wins, then you make a big matchup between Izzy and Baralho. That still works too. I think that was a matchup that has been talked about for a long time. When Baralho was coming up the division, when he was undefeated in the UFC, people were talking about him taking on Izzy next. He ended up, I think, getting that Imavov fight, and yeah, that didn't work out for him. He lost to Imavov, but Baralho Izzy could be an interesting fight, and you kind of have one of the biggest stars in the sport in Israel Adesanya versus someone with the Fighting Nerds hype. He doesn't really carry as much excitement as those other guys do in the Fighting Nerds, but he still represents the Fighting Nerds brand, and he's a bit of a star because of that. So it would be a cool fight. It would be enough name value to be like a feature fight, maybe even a co-main event on a week pay-per-view. I mean, shit, dude. Kyle Baralho versus DeRitter is a shit fight, and that was a co-main on this pay-per-view. So I think Izzy versus Baralho, if that were to happen, if Izzy gets past Pyfer, I think that would make sense as like a pay-per-view co-main on a pretty weak card. But yeah, I think Pyfer's gonna win though. So either way, match him up with the winner of this fight. And then for Rainer DeRitter at 205, I would like to see him matched up with Volkan Oezdemir. He's a powerful dude. He's knocked out a lot of guys in his run at 205. He's also shown weaknesses in his game, though. He can be out-grappled. He can also be knocked out on the feet. We've seen that plenty of times, especially by guys with kind of goofy styles, which Rainer DeRitter does pose. So I think this would be a good test to see if he's built for the 205 division. If he goes out there and runs through Volkan Oezdemir and looks a lot sharper and looks a lot, I don't know, more dangerous on the feet and is able to implement the grappling a lot better, then he could legitimately be a problem. But there's also a chance that he gets his lights shut out by Oezdemir. So I think it'd be a finish or be finished fight for both these guys. I think it'd be very entertaining, and it makes sense with Oezdemir coming off a win over Alonzo Menefield. Also, Oezdemir's fought quite a few guys in the light heavyweight division. He's been around for a while, so he needs a fresh name, and I think DeRitter would be a good way to solve that problem. We'll move on to Rob Font versus Raul Rosas Jr. Not much to talk about here. Raul Rosas is getting a lot of shit, which I think is fair. He's getting a lot of shit for this fight because of how dull and boring it was. And look, I completely understand. However, Rob Font, I don't know if at New England Cartel, at their gym, if he's just like throwing up omoplatas and arm bars off bottoms and subbing like complete chumps in the gym. But this doesn't work against UFC caliber opponents. We've seen it time and time again. Excuse me. Think back to the Corey Sandhagen fight. One-armed Corey Sandhagen was able to hold him down for 25 minutes, and Rob Font did nothing but try and throw up garbage submissions off his back, which is obviously not going to work against good grapplers. It's not going to work against anybody UFC caliber. Nevertheless, a good grappler like Raul Rosas. But Rob Font kept trying. Did did nothing to get back to the feet, did nothing to build his base, worked back to the fence, and build his way back up. He had the butterfly guard a lot. That was something, like I mentioned in the preview, that was something he had a lot against Corey Sandhagen, but he was not able to like explode off the hips and get some space to get back up to his feet. He just did none of that. He just kept trying these stupid submissions from bottom position. You're not gonna land an omoplata in the UFC. I don't know if it's ever been done before. If it has, it was probably in like the 2000s by a guy who was going up against someone who has no jiu-jitsu game. Back when the sport was, you could get away with being one-dimensional. That's not the case anymore. You can't get away with being one-dimensional, especially in a fight against one guy in the rankings and a guy who's now in the rankings. I know Rosas, I think he appeared at like number 15, I want to say, 14 or 15 in the rankings. I assume Rob Font's out of it. He sure as hell deserves to be after that performance. That was shocking. But again, like I said, with people accusing or with people going after Raul Rosas for a boring performance, that's also fair. That is also fair because he did nothing. He did not make any attempts to land any ground and pound shots. Didn't chase any submissions. He pretty much just camped in full guard and kind of backpacked him. He didn't really go for anything in this fight. It was a dull, boring fight. I mean, it was 47 total strikes, and that was from a guy who had dominant position for probably 80% of the fight. So that was absolutely abysmal from Raul Rosas. Very disappointing performance. And I know you could probably say the same about the main event, but at least Charles was going for submissions. He was landing ground and pound shots. He was elbowing the fuck out of Max Holloway. Raul Rosas was just camping positions where he had control, and that was boring. That was awful to watch. So I'm only gonna match up Raul Rosas. I don't give a shit about Rob Font. He can fight whoever the fuck. Doesn't matter to me. But for Raul Rosas Jr., I have him matched up with Vinicius Oliveira, coming off a loss to Mario Bautista. I think he's like one or two spots ahead of Raul Rosas in the rankings. And I think, however this goes, I think Vinicius Oliveira is going to make this entertaining. So it kind of forces Raul Rosas into a fun fight. Either Rosas gets him down and Vinicius Oliveira tries some wild shit from bottom position and ends up getting subbed, or Vinicius Oliveira puts a clinic on him, just completely walks him down, breaks him under his pressure, and gets a TKO win. I think either way, it would be a very exciting fight. I think it would be a finish regardless, and I don't think the UFC should be so quick to give up on Vinicius Oliveira, because although that performance against Mario Bautista was shocking, he did go into that fight with a broken arm, and he looked very poor. But he is one of the most exciting fighters in the bantamweight division, so I don't want the UFC to be so quick to give up on him. So have these two face off. Vinicius coming off a loss, Rosas coming off a win, and yeah, I think it'd be a compelling fight. It'd be interesting to see who wins that one. We'll go back here to this tab and take a glance at Drew Dober versus MJ, Michael Johnson. Got this one wrong. Got this one very, very wrong, and I should have known. I should have known, guys. It's real. The theories, I have no choice but to believe it's real. I mean, Drew Dober, racially motivated Drew Dober. He is a problem in the 155-pound division. And it shows again. Left Michael Johnson out cold, stiff on the canvas. I don't know why Michael Johnson always goes out like that. It's always so brutal. He's always like stiff as a board. His legs are always up in the air and his toes are curled and stuff. It's always not a pretty visual. He always gets left out cold. It's bad. Yeah, Drew Dober landed a flush. I think it was a right hand. Just came over the top of the overhand right, clobbered Michael Johnson on the chin, sent him down. And yeah, Michael Johnson, he was actually having some success in this fight in round one. I thought he probably won round one, although it was close. Not remembering. I don't have any notes written down about this matchup or anything, and just going off what I remember seeing. But Michael Johnson was having some success. There was a lot of times, like I predicted in this fight, where he was beating Drew Dober to the punch, and I thought the speed differential would be a big difference maker in this fight. But ultimately, Drew Dober, the power was on display again. The power was on display. He nukes Michael Johnson in the chin, puts him out cold in round two, a couple minutes into the round. And yeah, good bounce back from Drew Dober. He's actually looking really good since that Manuel Torres fight. I think he beat Kyle Prepolek. I think that's it. And then he had this fight against MJ. But this is an impressive win. I mean, Michael Johnson has been on a bit of a tear outside the lightweight rankings, having beaten Daniel Zellhuber, which I shouldn't have put so much stock into that win in hindsight, but I did. But yeah, Michael Johnson, he strung together a few good wins, and Drew Dober, he stopped that momentum with a screeching halt. It was a devastating knockout. So for Drew Dober next, I think you all know. I think you know. I mean, come on, you've seen all the other people's matchmaking videos and all the posts on Twitter and Instagram about who's next for Drew Dober, and it's all the same name. It's Jalen Turner. It's gotta be. It's gotta be. It only makes sense. We gotta test this theory. We gotta push this theory to its limits. I think Jalen Turner is a really, really tricky matchup for Drew Dober, but we gotta see how we gotta really test it. We gotta test this theory. It's a fun experiment. We just gotta see. We gotta see. It's what the people want. Yeah, Drew Dober, Jalen Turner. Come on, it's too easy to make. Gregory Rodriguez versus Bruno Ferreira. Not a whole lot to say about this one. Funny enough, it was kind of the opposite of the first fight, and that's actually how I kind of thought it would be that way. Gregory Rodriguez, into the first fight, he was so much more aggressive. He came out swinging, came up back in Bruno Ferreira against the fence, swinging big shots, and he ended up getting countered flush on the chin by a straight left, I think it was, from Bruno Ferreira. Gets put out cold in round 1. And then in the rematch, Bruno Ferreira is coming in with all the confidence. Oh, I knocked this guy out before I can do it again. Gregory Rodriguez stays patient, waits for his shot. Boom! Gets the guard coming down, finds a straight right over the top of Bruno Ferreira, and puts his lights out cold. No follow-up shot this time, thank goodness. No debilitating years off his life taking follow-up shots from Gregory Rodriguez. So I guess he has a little more compassion for his Brazilian brothers. But yeah, Bruno Ferreira was spared that brutal follow-up shot. So impressive win from Gregory Rodriguez. Showed a little bit more patience in this fight, which is something I've been kind of wanting to see from him in his career. We know he has the skill. He has the power. He has the boxing. He has solid grappling. He's not bad on the ground, and he is an absolute unit at 185. But he really lacked the composure and the patience and the ability to maintain the pace that he puts on. So I like this approach. I liked him coming out a little slower and waiting to find his shot. And it was pretty much with one of the first shots he landed, just boom, right on the chin, put Bruno Ferreira out cold. And yeah, impressive win for him. And for him, next up, I have Fluffy Hernandez. Next up for RoboCop. I was thinking about Reina de Ritter, but then I also got to thinking about how they both train at Kill Cliff. I don't think they would want to fight each other. Plus, right after I was kind of coming up with who I was going to match up with everyone. That fight was in mind, but then around that same time, Reina de Ritter announced he's going up to 205, so it made it pretty easy. Actually, it made it a little more difficult. I could have just matched them up against each other, but it made things a little bit more difficult, and I had to really scour through the rankings. Robert Whittaker was a name that I saw at the middleweight rankings that I thought was interesting. I think that would be a compelling matchup. I'd be worried for Whittaker. I don't want to see him get chinned, but he is moving up to 205, so I think he's going to get chinned regardless. But with him moving up to 205, that kind of puts him out of the picture at 185. And other than that, there's not really much matchups. I mean, other than this, you got Fluffy Hernandez coming off a loss. I think that's what makes the most sense. He's going to be fighting down in the rankings. He got completely shut out by Sean Strickland, finished in round 3, I believe it was. So he's going to have to be looking down the rankings for his next fight. And RoboCop's on a bit of a tear now since that loss to Cannonier. He's put together a few good wins. And yeah, I think this is the matchup that I would like to see next for Gregory RoboCop Rodriguez. And it would test how good his cardio is and if he's able to finish someone who's going to put a pace on him. So yeah, that'd be interesting to see. We'll move on to the prelims of this card. Nut shots galore in this fight. My goodness. Whew, come on. There we go. I was glitching for a second. Cody Garbrandt versus Zhao Long. I thought Zhao Long should have won this fight. And not because I don't think points should have been taken away. I think the point deductions were fair. But I think Zhao Long won all 3 rounds of this fight, truly. I did, especially in round 3, where Cody Garbrandt, he after the 1 point deduction, he came out there like he was going to try and kill Zhao Long. And then after the 2nd point deduction, he's like, oh shit, all I have to do is get the judges to score me round 1 of this fight, and I win. So he just kind of hopped on his bike and did not really do anything to engage with Zhao Long. Completely ran away for the last 3 minutes of the fight, which was pretty pitiful to watch. But he gets it done. He gets a 29-28 or not a 28. I don't even want to try and do the math here, guys. He wins because he won round 1 of this fight, and Zhao Long got 2 points deducted. He ended up winning this fight. I think the judges scored him round 1. I want to say that's how they scored it. Which I didn't really agree with, because although he did drop Zhao Long with the elbow clean over the guard when they were breaking, I didn't think he did enough, because Zhao Long also caught him and wobbled him really bad with a head kick, and then landed a knee/head kick sort of thing. It was like the Marlon Moraes KO over Aljamain Sterling. He landed one of those flush on Cody Garbrandt, kind of stumbled him there for a minute, and overall just landed. He was more active and he landed more strikes throughout the round. So, considering they both had big moments where they hurt each other, I kind of lean towards the guy who's a little bit more active, and he was also decimating Cody Garbrandt's legs with those kicks. He was taking him off his feet so many times with those low kicks. So I would have given this to Zhao Long. I think he won all 3 rounds, and I think he got kind of screwed. So Cody Garbrandt gets it done, though, regardless. I don't feel too bad for Zhao Long. I mean, you don't, the first nut shot, it was a level change. It was different. That was a different scenario. But the second one, it was a horrible nut shot. Cody Garbrandt was hacking into a bucket. And it was a pretty deliberate. I don't want to say it was deliberate, but it was a sloppy kick from Zhao Long, and it definitely altered the course of the fight. So, but then immediately following that, he throws two knees in the clinch against Cody Garbrandt right on the cup. So it's like, I can't feel too bad for you. It's looking pretty deliberate. Either it's deliberate or you're just unbelievably reckless. So, Zhao Long's probably going to be kicking himself for that, but Cody Garbrandt gets it done by very weird circumstances. Dante Johnson versus Cody Brundage. I don't think Dante Johnson's any good. I thought he was going to get this one done by a round 1 KO. Cody Brundage is just off a pretty quick turnaround from getting knocked out by Cam Rouston himself. I thought Dante Johnson would go out there and just blitz through him in round 1, which Cody Brundage can be tricky for some guys, for some bottom feeder guys. But I didn't think Dante Johnson was that. I thought he was solid. I also thought with his how explosive he was and how much of a little muscle hamster he was, I thought he'd be able to just power through whatever Cody Brundage put in his way. But he didn't. It was a very, very sloppy fight. He looked pretty poor on the feet. Kind of looked pretty poor wherever this fight went. He clearly won, I thought. I don't know why it was a split decision. I thought he very clearly won 2, maybe even 3 of these rounds. But it's still a disappointing performance. I expected higher of Dante Johnson. He was undefeated. He still is undefeated. But yeah, it was just not the performance I expected from him. I think Cody Brundage, also shit, as expected. Not much to say there, but really the big takeaway from this fight I had was Dante Johnson didn't look good. So, yeah, we'll move on. Ricky Turcios versus Alberto Montes. Speaking of fighters not looking good, Ricky Turcios sucks. The Tony Ferguson gimmick, the wild man gimmick, all that. It doesn't work. It doesn't work. You got to be like talented to do that. You got to be talented like Tony was to do that. Ricky Turcios is not good. He just kind of was dancing around at range, just flinging kicks out there, trying to be as awkward as possible to throw off Alberto Montes. But Montes stayed patient. He was landing good on the feet. Round 1 was a little hairy, but into round 2, Ricky Turcios shot a sloppy takedown. Alberto Montes locked up, so either Anaconda or Darce choke, one of the two. Gets it done early in round 2 by submission. Ricky Turcios, he's been submitted before in his career. He was by Raul Rosas. And Alberto Montes, he has a history of submitting guys. I mentioned that in the breakdown. So he was able to get this one done by submission, subbed Ricky Turcios out cold. He was laying on the canvas unconscious for quite a while. And yeah, I think I don't know, if he hasn't been cut from the UFC by now into this week, he probably will. Cody Durden versus Nyam Yargal, Tumen Dembarel. I wasn't able to catch much of this fight. I was having problems with my stream, but Tumen Dembarel, I was able to kind of go back and kind of skim through it. Yeah, he just kind of dominated, or he didn't dominate. He was just ahead everywhere this fight went. He out-grappled Cody Durden. He was able to reverse position quite a bit, landed more on the feet. No, maybe not landed more on the feet, but I think he landed the better shots in this fight. Cody Durden did not look good. I will say, though, Nyam Yargal, he did, I heard that he grabbed the cage quite a bit. He was doing that to stop takedowns. He also, I think there was like some low blows. There was a bunch of fouls in this fight I've heard from Nyam Yargal. So shameful performance. I guess they didn't take away points from him for that. But yeah, the refs tend to be pretty inconsistent. So what can I say? But yeah, he still gets it done by decision. Cody Durden didn't look any good in this fight, and that might be the end of Cody Durden's time in the UFC. And that can be said for, honestly, that's probably it. Just Cody Durden and Ricky Turcios. I think that's it for guys they might cut from this card. Although a lot of these guys didn't look UFC caliber. Sumo Derji versus Jesus Aguilar. Sumo Derji gets it done exactly how I predict. A lot of these fights that I did predict correct, I called it to a T. And in this fight, it was no different. Just a complete range difference from Sumo Derji. Just way longer arms, way taller, bigger frame. And when he's fighting guys who are just trying to scrap with him on the feet, he is able to handle them. He's able to keep his distance and land big shots from way outside and be out of the range of Jesus Aguilar's shots. I mean, Jesus Aguilar is 5'4" against 5'10" Sumo Derji, and Sumo Derji has nearly a 10-inch reach advantage over him. So this fight went pretty much exactly as you'd expect. Sumo Derji peppering him at range, winning this fight, 30-27 decision, very clear. Even had a little bit of success in the grappling in this fight. You see he had 4 takedowns. Just clear shutout performance from Sumo Derji. Nothing much to say there. Rafael Tavares versus Dr. Nergajai. Went 0 for 2 to start this card on my predictions. I was wrong with my Rafael Tavares pick. I didn't realize he was only 22 years old. I guess I should have looked into that a little bit more closely, but he does not look like a 22-year-old at all. I don't. Do I look older than him to you guys? I'm apparently a year older than this Brazilian mutant over here. So, yeah, Rafael Tobias is only 22 years old, and that inexperience kind of showed because he looked pretty sloppy on the feet in this fight. He also looked his entries on takedowns looked completely lazy. He went 2 for 8 on takedown attempts. I'm surprised he even got one of them in this fight because they looked really sloppy. Jari Nurgajai was kind of just flowing. He was landing shots effortlessly. He was chewing up the legs with the low kicks. He was catching Rafael Tobias on the counter shots consistently throughout this fight. He looked good. He looked good. Jari Nurgajai did. He looked like a much more experienced fighter, which he is. I thought he was going to get. He actually got hurt really bad in round 2, and I thought, oh shit, Rafael Tobias might fluke this because he looked really poor, and then all of a sudden he wobbled Jari Nurgajai pretty bad. But Nurgajai was able to recover, survive to the end of round 2, and then in round 3 pick back right up where he started, and he was ahead pretty much everywhere this fight went. This fight, so yeah, impressive performance from Jari Nurgajai. I did not think he was UFC caliber, but I think he can hang with some of the guys. He can be a decent little test for some guys in their debut. Rafael Tobias back to the drawing board. I mean, he's young, so allegedly, I still don't believe he's 22, but whatever they say. Either way, if he's anywhere near 22, he's young. He's got a lot of time to improve in the game. And yeah, we'll see where his career goes. Luke Fernandez versus Rodolfo Bellato. Luke Fernandez was winning this fight up until he wasn't, and that's when Rodolfo Bellato caught him in the pocket with the left hook. As Luke Fernandez was kind of starting to throw one himself, Bellato beat him to the punch, dropped him bad, finished him off with ground and pound. But up until that point, Luke Fernandez, he looked like he was much better on the feet. He looked like he was clearly ahead. I mean, he was wobbling Rodolfo Bellato a couple times. Early in the round, he kind of like stumbled him back against the cage with the overhand. But yeah, that's the sport we're in. Anybody has a puncher's chance, and Rodolfo Bellato, of all people, finds the knockout win in round 1 over Luke Fernandez. Kind of a fluky exchange in the pocket, but I mean, I guess that's something for Luke Fernandez to reflect on. He was undefeated, hasn't really been tested to this level yet, and that defensive irresponsibility caught him in this fight. So I'm sure he'll improve from that. I'm sure it'll be a learning experience. And Rodolfo Bellato probably keeps his spot in the UFC after this one, because he has had a bizarre run, to say the least, in the UFC. So this win over a debuting prospect, it saves his spot, and yeah, we'll see who he's got next. So that is all I got for this card. Thank you guys so much for watching. I appreciate it. I'm going to be making a kind of I guess a recap of all the White House card announcement fights. Probably later today, maybe tomorrow. We'll see what my schedule looks like. But yeah, that is all I got for you guys. Thank you so much for tuning in, and I will see you next time.